What's happening, guys? Hope that everyone had an incredible weekend. Welcome to another huge, with a capital Y, episode of Triggered. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. So much big breaking news to cover, much of that as it relates to me, my family, my father, Trump Organization in New York, and we will get to all of it. Also coming up, we'll be speaking with Matt Cole. He's the CEO of Strive Asset Management. That's Vivek's company. They've been looking and as one of the leading voices taking on DEI and ESG. And how's all of that working out? We're going to talk to him about Boeing and what's happening there, how it's affecting your safety every time you get on an airplane. If you're like me, and most people aren't, because I travel about 300,000 commercial air miles a year, it's pretty scary. Now, you get on a plane, you're looking in the cockpit, you're wondering, hey, is someone competent, or did they just check a lot of boxes? That's kind of scary. So later, we'll also have reporter Jerry Dunleavy. He's the author of a new book, Kabul, The Untold Story of Biden's Fiasco and the American Warriors Who Fought to the End, which uncovers even more shocking details about Biden's disgraceful withdrawal from Afghanistan. Remember, guys, the adults were going to be back in charge. We were told that very clearly. And then we had the Secretary of State. He was very shocked. He was shocked and dismayed that the Taliban did not install a more diverse and inclusive government. You know, these are the serious people who are the adults that are back in charge. But Jerry Dunleavy will be on. We'll be talking with him as well on all of this. So you will not want to miss it. Make sure you guys are liking. I see how many people are in. I know it's ramping up. Your likes are not commensurate with how many people are viewing. Hit the button. It's easy. That's how we get ahead. Also, make sure you're sharing, subscribing. I'm not on every week like some of the guys because I do this because I'm a masochist, not because it's the day job, but I do care. So since we're not on every week, it's not maybe natural to tune in at X time. Remember, we're on Mondays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. Put on your notifications. You can do that. If you're subscribing, also head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you miss an episode here on Rumble, you can check it out that way on those platforms. If you have other friends, that's how they get their podcast, maybe when they're traveling or whatever it may be. Download, subscribe, make sure people know that that is available to them as well. So I really appreciate you guys doing that. Again, it's because of you that makes all of this happen. So also, guys, for all of the top headlines that I'll cover here on the show, head over to my news app, MXM News, where you can get the mainstream news without the mainstream bias, because we've seen how that works. We've seen all the craziness of Google and the manipulation of elections. We've seen what's going on over at Meta with Instagram and, conveniently selecting, making sure that people don't see political content in an election year. I have a feeling, folks, that people who don't want to see election content will still be smothered with radical leftist bullshit nonstop. But if you're a conservative, that probably matters. So check out MXM News. They tell us every time, hey, if you don't like what you get on Google, go build your own. So, guys like me actually go and do that. If you can support us, that would be awesome. Go check it out. MXM, like minute-by-minute news. That's where we'll get all these stories, and we'll get into detail on that. But that's sort of, the non-biased version of what's happening. We'll show you both sides. You can pick for yourself what's actually going on, because you're certainly not going to get that elsewhere. We're also, guys, going to begin with even more developments from the far-left madness that is driving our country quite literally off of a cliff. Biden's America means that illegal immigrants, or anyone for that matter, can take over your country, and squatters can now take over your house. They can just move in, take over, tell you to walk, and there's nothing you can do about it. I talked about it last week. Squatting is becoming a major issue in this country. People literally just walk into your house or break into your house, say that they reside here, and once they do that, in some of these liberal hellholes, nothing can happen. You are powerless in your own home. For example, 2 squatters were arrested for murdering a woman and stuffing her inside a duffel bag. Liberal laws and liberal courts mean that it's very easy for someone to simply move into your house and not get evicted. I mean, think of how insane that is. This is happening in the United States of America, where property rights are like a basic rite of passage. It's like almost fundamental here, and yet it doesn't matter. In fact, there was a recent protest in Washington state over a squatter who got a restraining order against the homeowner. This is real. This is happening right now, and you have to see this one for yourself.
No stay. No pay. No stay.
On this rainy Saturday afternoon,
this means a lot to me and my family.
A crush of protesters turned out once again to pressure serial squatter Sang Kim to leave.
나가라 사기꾼.
This is the second rally in as many weeks.
At this point, we're trying to call out Dow Constantine, anything in the housing authority under Jay Inslee.
Even after owing homeowner Jaskaran Singh tens of thousands of dollars in back rent, Kim is still refusing to leave this property in Bellevue's Woodridge neighborhood.
This has been going unchecked and seems to be expected as normal by our law and by our leaders.
So the public,
What are you doing?
shaming,
This guy has been playing with the system.
continues. Brought the doggy today again.
Yes, he doesn't support this at all.
Adding to the absurdity of this situation, Singh's friends and family members led this weekend's rally without him.
How many can imagine someone living in your home rent-free for a year to 2 years?
Singh waited patiently at a park 1,000 feet away.
So here's the rent. You haven't paid a rent for the last 1 year.
That's because Kim accused Singh of harassment, and a King County judge believed him, issuing a temporary protection order last week.
Guys, think about how upside down the world has become. The law punishes the property owner, not the thief. This isn't a property owner trying to throw out a renter who has a lease and is paying. This is someone who hasn't paid in months, doesn't probably intend to because they understand that the law is designed to help them and penalize those who worked hard and perhaps bought homes and made that their business. Meanwhile, in Michigan, the geniuses there are offering $500 a month for illegal immigrants, or as they now call them, newcomers. Yes, guys, they're newcomers. They're going to pay them to move there so that your tax dollars can continue to pay for them and their families in perpetuity. Seriously, it's called the Newcomer Rental Subsidy. Get that? The Newcomer Rental Subsidy. The state of Michigan will give up to $6,000 a year to eligible illegal immigrants for them to spend on rent. Democrats are doing all they can to encourage illegal immigrants to come to this country. You show up to the border, you get allowed in, then you get subsidized housing, you get free schooling, you get a job with Tyson Chicken. It's a dream for them. But it's a nightmare for American citizens who are struggling, who have to no longer just pay for themselves, their children, their needs, and their families, but for 12 to 15 and countless millions of others who are often cases not going to be able to ever pay into a system. You have to subsidize the people breaking the law. Welcome to Democrat America. Welcome to the Biden administration. Now, folks, you can change this all. You can make this insanity stop in November. But if you sit idly by and allow apathy to take over, you're going to continue to pay for this nonsense forever while your American dream continues to be diminished. While Democrats allow squatters to destroy property rights and subsidize housing for illegal immigrants, they're also trying to punish successful real estate developers. Look at this article from the New York Times just yesterday. Pinning a value to Trump's buildings is a guessing game. Wait, what? Pinning a value to his real estate is a guessing game? Wait a minute, folks. I thought the New York Times and Attorney General Letitia James knew for a fact what every building is worth. They told us very clearly and very loudly. Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million. Apparently, if Donald Trump's, a pretty solid real estate guy says they're worth X, they can say it's worth 1% of X, and that's correct. But then, all of a sudden, now they're not sure. Now they're not sure what it's worth. Isn't that the entire thesis of their case? If they're not sure, they're saying it. What was the purpose of the last 2 years? Oh, that's right, sorry. the political persecution of their enemies, going after a political opponent. They understand Joe Biden can't win, so they have to try to beat him in other ways. That's what's going on right now. Now there was a win at the appeals court today with the bond. Remember the $463 million bond arbitrarily put on by Judge Engoron because we made profits, and therefore those profits and anything that came from it afterwards have to be slashed and paid for in full, and even liberal law professors are saying it's insane. Well, the 463 was slashed to 175 million. That's the bond while we're waiting for things on appeal. But still, it is outrageous for there to be any amount when there was no fraud and there were no damages. Remember, folks, the alleged victim of all of this, Deutsche Bank, like a probably $1 trillion institution, got on the stand and said that they wanted to do more business with us, not less. That they were paid back in full, that we never missed a payment, that they made hundreds of millions of dollars, and that they used the business of the Trump organization and the deals we did together as like feathers in their cap for them to get other business. But that doesn't matter because we live in dystopian times. Nonetheless, folks, this is a big win in reining in Engoron's baseless ruling. He's now been overturned 5 times in this case alone. Think about that, okay? Remember, when the original 463 came out, it included deals that were already ruled on by the appellate division like 6 months ago. We brought them there. They said they were out of the statute of limitations, all of this. It didn't matter because they don't care about the rule. The judge ignored the appellate division, the higher court, so that he could come up with a higher number in this case, because even if you do have to put up a bond, there's collateral that is gone forever. If this thing turns into zero, you still have to spend probably tens of millions of dollars just to get the bond to make the way for the holding pattern. That's what's going on. They're just trying to hurt you. They don't care about the law. They don't care about their own courts. They don't care about the higher courts. They care about nothing other than persecuting their political enemies. The cases from Letitia James, from Alvin Bragg's unfounded campaign finance theory, right, where they rely on convicted fraudster, liar, Michael Cohen. That's their star witness, folks. Someone who's literally lied before Congress, was caught lying multiple times, served time in prison for, minor details like that, I don't know the exact details. I don't remember them anymore because it was so ridiculous and so unfounded, but, that's going to be the star witness. None of these things are anything more than election interference on behalf of Joe Biden. It is all they have left. No solutions to make your life better, just corruption to try to enrich themselves. Polls now show Biden is losing every swing state. Guess what, folks? You cannot win re-election with rising prices, an open border, nonstop evacuations of U.S. embassies abroad, along with chaos at home and elsewhere. Trillions probably going to be blown on wars that we don't know what the end game actually means. Inflation, gas prices, overall insanity, paying illegals while Americans suffer. Probably not a winning formula. But Democrats don't care about the rule of law, folks. They care about power, and they will do anything to maintain it. The New York Post's front cover today was about how the number of violent assaults in New York subways have increased by 50%. You know how big an increase that is? Does Bragg do anything about this? I mean, that's his job, right? He's the district attorney. Does he do anything about it? Of course not. So those who can and can afford to flee, like myself, do. And the rest of the people there suffer while they go on their political witch hunts. And meanwhile, folks, it was also revealed that Joe Biden lied to special counsel Robert Hur. Last time I checked, that's a federal crime. As someone who's done 50 hours of testimony before Congress and other congressional bodies, I have a feeling that I would be in jail if this happened. The Democrats would make sure of it. Joe Biden told her that he defended a company sued by a welder that, quote, lost part of his penis. You can't make this up. I don't remember Joe Biden actually ever practicing law because he's an idiot and went right into government and has done nothing other than leech off the American taxpayers since. But Biden claimed that his legal defense helped the company win the case. Well, folks, there are two big problems. That case happened in 1968 when Biden was still in school. And the welder won the lawsuit. So it's a complete and total lie from Joe Biden. It's a fabrication, like so many of his other stories. Like when he talks about losing his son on the field of battle. When he can't remember anything else, I don't know if that's a lie, but it shows the gross incompetence that Robert Hur, this same special prosecutor, noted to media outrage. Will Joe Biden face any consequences for his continued lies under oath? No, of course he won't, folks. He's a Democrat. They don't have to play by the rules. They are totally immune and absolved from anything from rules, law, and even decency. Just look at Hunter. You cannot make this stuff up, folks. Democrats are abusing the law to try to destroy their political rival, and they are ignoring the crisis at the border. This is newly relevant due to the rise of ISIS. Yes, folks, ISIS, who Donald Trump, my father, your favorite president, basically eliminated in about 2 weeks. ISIS is apparently back. ISIS was behind the attack in Moscow, apparently, that killed over 130 people. This is Joe Biden's only accomplishment, putting ISIS back in business. That's Joe Biden's claim. Joe Biden has done nothing for America, but he's put ISIS back on the map. My father demolished them, and now they are back due to Joe Biden's incompetence, due to Democrat Party policy putting America last. That's where we are. Biden's own Border Patrol chief, not Trump's, Joe Biden's, went on CBS this weekend to warn that our open border is a national security threat that ISIS could take advantage of. I'm so shocked to hear this, folks. ISIS could take advantage of a Swiss cheese border that no one's watching, that everyone's let in and paid money to survive. I'm shocked to hear this. But again, just so you can hear it with your own ears from Joe Biden's own Border Patrol chief, here you go, folks.
About the potential dangerous people or potential terrorists who may be infiltrating the country because you are so focused on processing asylum seekers, families, and others who are in distress.
Absolutely. That's you ask any law enforcement officer, especially somebody that works in border security, that is what keeps us up at night. We're at closing in on 1 million entries this fiscal year alone. That number is a large number, but what's keeping me up at night is the 140,000 known gotaways.
That is not part of that tally.
That is not part of that tally. And that's just what we know.
Is that a national security risk?
That is a national security threat. Border security is a big piece of national security. And if we don't know who is coming into our country and we don't know what their intent is, that is a threat. And they're exploiting a vulnerability that's on our border right now.
You mentioned...
Guys, 140,000 known gotaways? Known gotaways? I mean, imagine the unknown. If it's ISIS, if it's other terror groups, if it's Iran-backed, do you think maybe there's a lot more than that are unknown gotaways that maybe were better funded or smarter or more sophisticated to be able to manipulate the system to get into their country? You understand what that could do? What those sleeper cells could accomplish in destroying our country? That, again, is Joe Biden. That is his legacy. Biden, Kamala Harris, and that liar Karine Jean-Pierre tell us nonstop, guys, nonstop. The border isn't a real issue, folks. It's Republican drama, yada, yada, yada. It's the Republicans' fault, even though we changed all the policies that made it the most secure border we'd ever have. But here we have the current head of the Border Patrol saying that Biden's open border is a national security threat. This is Biden's fault, and everyone is taking advantage of him. We went from remain in Mexico to Mexico's president literally making demands from us. Here's Mexico's president yesterday trying to extort the United States on 60 Minutes. Think about this, folks. We had it under control. They were working with us because of tariffs and other things. Now Mexico is trying to extort us on a world stage. Mexico is going to extort the United States of America because of Joe Biden's weakness and incompetence and general Democrat strategy. Think of how insane that is. Think of how far we have fallen. Watch this. All right, we're having a little trouble pulling up the video, but let's just say it sounds like straight up extortion, okay? Mexico's president is saying that he'll flood our country with criminals if we don't do what he asks. Imagine that. Mexico's going to flood our country. We're just going to say, hey, we're going to send you all of our criminals, all the dregs of society from not just Mexico, but from other countries. We'll bring them in here. We'll send them into your country if you don't do what we tell you. Mexico is making demands of America. The American taxpayer gets to suffer the consequences. Welcome to Joe Biden's America. It does not have to be this way. Guys, we got the clip. Okay, watch for yourself.
With the ear of the White House, President López Obrador proposed his fix, that the United States commit $20 billion a year to poor countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, lift sanctions on Venezuela, end the Cuban embargo, and legalize millions of law-abiding Mexicans living in the U.S.
If they don't do the things that you've said need to be done, then what?
The flow of migrants will continue.
Hey, guys, just give them another $20 billion. I mean, we're sending another 60 to Ukraine. Who cares? Just another $20 billion. We give it to Mexico and these other countries. It'll get, passed down to exactly no one outside of the upper echelons of government. We'll create an oligarch class of criminals throughout Latin America. It's wonderful. What could possibly go wrong? So just so we're clear, we went from having a lot of control over our border, the most ever, to a lot of control over Mexico, to Mexico extorting us on a world stage, publicly, with a straight face. This is a clown show, people. Finally, guys, after nonstop plane issues, Boeing's CEO announced today that he will be stepping down. Thank God. As I mentioned earlier, if you fly as much as me, you want the planes to work. I'd like them to be flown by the most capable people ever. I don't care if they check boxes or if they don't. I just like capable. Our first guest, Matt Cole, had a great analysis today on Twitter how DEI and ESG turned Boeing into an absolute dumpster fire, okay? We're going to get to that interview because it's a big one. And it turns out Boeing's collapse happened after, shockingly, wait for it, folks, drum roll, after it added a DEI requirement for suppliers. Think about that. They added a DEI requirement for suppliers of people who make airplanes that fly at like 600 miles an hour at 36,000 feet in the air. What could possibly go wrong? So now, after adding a DEI requirement for its suppliers, their CEO is making an emergency exit. Who could have seen this coming, guys? It's amazing, but we're going to have some fun with this interview. So we're going to get to our first guest in just a second, but first, a quick word from one of our great sponsors, Public Square. You've heard me talk about it over and over again, but Public Square and the Patriot economy are so critical to everything that's going on right now, guys. On Public Square, you can put power behind your purchase and let your dollars reflect your values. Don't give your money to companies who hate you, hate your values, hate your guts, hate your country. It's easy. Give it to freedom-loving companies who actually support you. And we're going to begin by spotlighting some of these great companies on the show. Companies like Vanish Holsters. If you conceal carry or you want to start doing so, with the crime going on in America right now, I highly recommend it. I do it anyway. If you're a late adapter, get on it. You need the Vanish holster. This holster fixes the number one problem with most holsters, which is they're uncomfortable and they make it much harder to carry. That's why Vanish has sold over 100,000 of these products in just the past 16 months. Plus, it works without a tactical belt, the more rigid belts that you use. when you're actually on the range or something like that. It supports multiple carry positions, has level 2 retention, and even conceals 2 spare mags as well. And the Vanish supports your values. They're signed up on Public Square. So go to publicsquare.com/VNSH. That's publicsquare.com/VNSH to claim a limited time offer on their concealed carry holsters. That's publicsquare.com/VNSH. And again, find the companies that you want to support. Find the companies that share your values. Give them your hard-earned money. Pulling the money out of the ecosystem of woke corporate America is one of the number one things we can collectively do to fight back against the insanity that we're seeing. So check them out and do that. Joining me now, though, folks, CEO of Strive Asset Management, Matt Cole. How's it going, Matt?
Good, Don. How are you?
Oh, man. Crazy times. It feels like, I'm living the Truman Show every day. I'm just waiting for, a TV camera that's not part of the podcast studio to fall out of the ceiling because I feel like I've been being punked. How about you?
Pretty much the same. It's pretty fitting that you had an advertisement for Public Square right before we get into this conversation, because I know that's one company where DEI is not infecting it. And I think we're all having much better days today than Boeing, right? And
yeah, Boeing's having a rough day. I mean, and it's honestly, it's a shame. Listen, my dad has a Boeing. We fly, his plane's a 757. It's a Boeing. It's like, this is one of the great American companies. I mean, if you think of sort of the, original great American companies, Boeing, you got, General Electric, you see them being destroyed for no reason other than they're adapting these ridiculous woke policies. So, I mean, maybe we start with Boeing. I'm curious about your thoughts on some of the others, but like, you broke down today, on Twitter, X, I'm so used to still calling it Twitter, but how liberal ideology destroyed this once great, like, iconic American company. Can you talk about that? Because like, it's a big one in the sense that like, when doors start flying off planes, when people don't want to go down in a ball of fire on a plane. If other things happen at a bank, maybe they don't care as much, but like, falling out of the sky is probably something that can wake people up. Break it down for us in detail, because it's almost shocking how insane it all is.
It is shocking, and it's important that to reiterate, this is a great American company, like you said, and personally, I still have love for these companies. I don't love where they are, but let's actually back up a little bit. For a 20-year period, 2000 to August of 2019, Boeing actually outperformed the S&P 500 by almost 1,000%, 10x outperformance. It was rocking and rolling for a period of 20 years as one of the best performers in America. And in 2019, this is when things really started to go off the rails. And it started with this Business Roundtable initiative. And what the Business Roundtable initiative, it was 181 CEOs of large American companies. Boeing was one of them. You could probably pick your poison of the most woke companies today in America. They all signed this statement. And this statement said that American capitalism is outdated. And so this is the opposite of make America great again or anything. It's America's not good. And we are going to move away from that and move towards the ESG agenda, the DEI agenda, the World Economic Forum agenda. And this marked the beginning of Boeing's downfall. So what did we see after that? They signed that in August 2019. 2022, Boeing adds climate and DEI to their executive compensation. And so what that means is that as much as I want to hate on this CEO, and the CEO did sign this initiative in 2019, his paycheck became dependent on implementing climate agenda and DEI agenda at his company. So at that point, I actually think a lot of the blame was on the board of Boeing that implemented this executive compensation plan. They also, in 2022, which you briefly talked about, added that you have to look at ESG and DEI when assessing suppliers. And so it's up and down everything at Boeing, ESG and DEI. That's literally 2022. So then you fast forward literally 1 to 2 years later, 2023, 2024, and Boeing's planes start falling apart literally. It did not take long for the destruction of this company to happen. And it has big implications, obviously, on safety, which, as an American, as someone that flies a lot, is my biggest concern. But at Strive, we are also owners of Boeing, and what we've seen is Boeing underperform the S&P 500 by 135% just since 2019 when they signed that initiative. And it's important to note that Boeing can't just do this on their own.
Yeah.
No corporation can just do this on their own. Your shareholders have to bless this. And who are the largest shareholders of Boeing, like most corporations in America? BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. And they have a lot of blame in this. And so this is where we are today, one of the great American companies really struggling, and we need to restore excellence there. We need to restore meritocracy there. It's worth defending. It's worth defending while we also may say, I don't like this. I might look for other. Now with Boeing, with the airplane manufacturer, it's a little bit more difficult. You can't go to Public Square and buy a different airplane. You can go and buy consumer goods, but we really need to restore excellence at these great American companies.
So, yeah, but talk about that a little bit in the sense that, obviously Boeing, great American company, and yet that happened. What's in it for Vanguard and BlackRock? And they're destroying their own value. And I get it. They're investing, they're playing with sort of other people's money, but, their comp is still based on success in many cases. And yet, Airbus, European company, probably obviously Boeing's biggest competitor, they don't have these problems. And yet that's in Europe, which is going to be, by all reasonable measures, much further ahead of us of the sort of the liberalized woke scale of dealing with stuff. How come it's not happening there? How come you're not hearing about that happening at Airbus planes? And yet probably the same policies. I imagine they're public companies. I imagine they have the same sort of globalist pressure on the nonsense. And yet it seems to affect the American companies so much more.
There's a key difference. So on the environmental climate agenda side, it is effectively exactly the same, where you actually have Europe imposing its standards on American companies with the blessings of the large asset managers. But where it's different is the DEI agenda. That's a little bit more on the American side, because in Europe, they're a much more homogenous culture. They don't actually have as many of the divisions that we have in this country. So you actually don't see DEI infecting it as much there. And you asked a question, what's in it for BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, these large corporations? What's in it for them is a couple of different things. One, their largest clients tend to be in blue states. So whether it's CalPERS, the California Public Employees Retirement System, which is actually where I started my career before Vivek pulled me, thankfully, out of California into Ohio.
Solid move.
But, yeah, very, very, very solid move. But I saw there for 16 years the belly of the beast of what the tip of the sphere is of ESG and DEI. BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, they're the weight behind the tip of the sphere. But why? Because their largest clients, like CalPERS, like the New York pension funds, demand it, like European clients as well. And so they bent the knee. And why did they bend the knee? Because on the other side, no one was looking. No one cared. And so what you had is a period of 3 to 4 years where a lot changed. Right now, we have literally 75% of the companies in the S&P 500 that tie executive compensation to ESG and DEI measures. If you just went back to 2010, that number was 0. 0 to 75%. And so now you have red states pushing back. You have people waking up and say, whoa, what's happening to Boeing? What's happening to Disney? What's happening to Google? Well, it's already been implemented. And what happens is that because they've voted and engaged publicly, they struggle as companies to take it back. Because if they take it back, what they're doing is they're admitting on record a fiduciary breach. They can't do that. So right now, they're kind of in this weird spot where they're trying to say, hey, Texas, we didn't impose an environmental climate agenda that cost billions of dollars on Exxon and Chevron. Don't divest from us. And then they'll go to California and say, hey, California, we still stand by everything we said for the last 5 years. They're in this difficult dance that I think is really just wading back and forth. And we need to get back to their principles.
Yeah, because, unfunded pension liability is one of the $1 trillion problems that almost no one talks about in America, right? And, CalPERS with probably hundreds of thousands of teachers that are going to be dependent on them actually succeeding. You would think that, hey, maybe you just do what's best for, their fiduciaries, right? The people who paid into these pension systems, instead of investing in companies that they're going to destroy by pushing those policies. So, while CalPERS and the people in charge there may be pushing the woke agenda, when those pensions are due and there's not enough money in the kitty to pay them, it's going to be a problem. And it's a problem that seems like it's entirely avoidable if they didn't push this sort of insanity, and drive people's values, the people that are actually the dependents of these funds, into smithereens.
Exactly. It's teachers, it's law enforcement officers. So why did I even go to CalPERS? I've been aligned with American capitalism since day one. My parents were law enforcement officers. They had their pensions tied to CalPERS. It's exactly what you're saying. And here's how bad and dirty this game is. And it's not just California, it's many states. There's a board there, and that board is actually majority appointed directly by the governor's office in California. They have a 15-person board. 8 of them are elected by the governor. 7 of them, a minority, are elected by the pensioners. So the pensioners keep putting in people that say, hey, I don't care about ESG. I don't care about DEI. We're underfunded, make money. But then it doesn't matter because it's so politicized from the top that you can't do anything but implement these crazy values.
Yeah, they'll bail it out with other taxpayer money in the end rather than doing what's responsible. I mean, it seems like a vicious cycle, but I guess it never ends with these policies. I want to talk, you wrote a great piece in The Hill about how Joe Biden's CHIPS Act is pushing companies outside of the U.S. In fact, Intel, Samsung are moving manufacturing facilities overseas. Even what little manufacturing we have left in America is moving overseas because of DEI requirements in Biden's legislation. For example, I guess it mandated in one case a quota for female construction workers and on-care childcare for those female construction workers. What's going on, with the CHIPS Act? Break it down, and this seems like, another disaster looming.
Yeah, and it gets to the point that DEI is literally killing America. So why do we have the CHIPS Act? We have the CHIPS Act because of geopolitical risks with China. There are risks that China could annex Taiwan by 2027, and Taiwan is where over 90% of the most advanced semiconductors are made. So there's this need to onshore manufacturing of semiconductors to the United States. So Congress approved a $280 billion act to help do that. And so you could agree with that or disagree with that. But then what was really interesting from our perspective and where we wrote this article is we saw this dance start to occur where the White House would make an announcement. We are about to open up the checkbooks and write a massive check to Intel, TSMC, Samsung. And then a day or two later, Intel would make an announcement, say, we are delaying our fab. And you would see this dance back and forth. And what the dance was showing to us was that there was a public negotiation happening between the White House and these large chips manufacturers. So we started digging into it. We dug into the bill. What did we find in the bill of things that could actually cause these delays from 2025 to 2027, 2028? We found DEI pork. And come to find out, the Department of Commerce, at the very end of the bill negotiations, added all this pork. They added 19 sections aimed at helping minority groups. They required all corporations to describe how they were going to adhere to Biden's DEI-focused, quote-unquote, good jobs principles. They must recruit economically disadvantaged individuals and remove, quote-unquote, barriers to equity. You mentioned the female construction workers part. Well, it's important to note that what percentage of construction workers in the U.S. do you think are female? It's actually less than 10%. So if you have a massive requirement to hire females, you can't find workers. They also added some e-pork in there as well. It wasn't just DEI pork. They added a requirement that you should try to use 100% renewable energy. And so when you added it up, what did you end up with? You ended up with building a fab in America was going to cost 4 to 5 times more than it would cost to build in Asia. And more importantly, multiple times more than it was expected to cost, even when the CHIPS bill was starting negotiations. And lastly, it's not just about the fab facilities. You also have chemical manufacturers, you have material makers that are part of the supply chain for these semiconductors, and they're also delaying plants. And so when you have plants delayed till 2027, 2028, the risk that we have here is that China annexes Taiwan, we lose our supply of chips, and our onshore manufacturers aren't online, and we're out of luck.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they're not going to do us a favor in time of war. They're probably not going to do us a favor anyway, but it never ends. Talk about how the SEC has a new mandatory climate disclosure rule that will cost companies hundreds of billions of dollars. What does that have to do with the SEC? Why are they getting involved, and why is the Biden administration doing this and forcing it down corporate America's throats? I mean, same question as it relates to CalPERS investing in any of these stocks. It's just another cost. It's going to hurt those pensioners. It's going to hurt investors. What's the deal there?
Your first reaction when you see this, and this was my reaction as well, literally a couple of weeks ago, is say, wow, SEC government overreach again, 3-letter agency. And then you start to peel it back. And what we noticed was that there was hundreds of public letters to the SEC, letters asking, begging the SEC to implement this. Who was writing the letters? None other than BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, on the record to the SEC requesting them for the quote unquote protection of investors. And so it's important to note that when you actually say, well, what is the protection that they're providing? The protection is, in their words, that they view we're in a climate emergency and that we need to see all the risks up and down the supply chain of climate and reduce those risks, reduce them by forcing corporations to reduce their emissions beyond U.S. law. Well, what's this disclosure rule going to do? It's going to cost corporations literally hundreds of billions of dollars. Just one consultant, PwC, spent over $12 billion getting ready to help companies implement this agenda. And so again, you get back to this, how is this actually helping companies? And there is no good answer. There was some great takedowns of how this wasn't just an overreach of the SEC, but of large asset managers. And it was a very contentious vote. It was voted 3-2 on party lines, and something that I think could be unwound in a future administration if it's not the Biden administration.
Yeah, I think that's one you got to get rid of because it's just never going to end. But I guess some states are taking action against ESG investing. Texas just divested from BlackRock. Do you think the fight against ESG and woke companies is actually succeeding? Do you think they can have enough critical mass to make a difference? Are those guys just so big? Are they such juggernauts that it's almost irrelevant? Even Texas pulling it doesn't really change that much or doesn't change their worldview where they stop pushing the woke nonsense down our throats.
I think we can win this. It's going to take a lot. I don't think we're there yet. I think where we are right now is I think we are at a point where further progress has largely stalled, but 75% of the companies in the S&P 500 have already implemented incentive comp tied to ESG and DEI. So it's great that Texas pulled $8 billion from BlackRock, but obviously it's a drop in the bucket for trillions. But you saw BlackRock go unhinged. They wrote this letter trying to humiliate the chairman of the Texas Board of Education that pulled this $8 billion. And this is where I stepped in. Actually, I wrote a post on X just to call this out because it's crazy that you would have BlackRock try to humiliate a chairman, but then you say, well, why are they? They're afraid because they don't want anyone else to do the same thing because they see the risk here of this ballooning into something much larger. So I called them out. I called them out on a few different things that they've done that have explicitly hurt energy companies, because this is what Texas really cares about because of the energy companies that exist within Texas. Well, a couple of things. One, BlackRock had actually forced onto Chevron, requiring them to reduce their Scope 3 emissions, which is their emissions up and down their supply chain, beyond U.S. regulations. What's important about that, it's literally public, that Chevron was recommending do not let this happen. BlackRock pushed it on anyways. They did the same thing with Exxon, where they pushed on 3 climate activists on the board of Exxon. How crazy is that? Exxon then actually took the step of, in 2022, at our request, of adding on additional board members that actually had real experience in energy, which is what you would think you would want for a company like Exxon, back onto their board. So they did that. They asked the SEC.
They could put Hunter Biden on. He's an
these...
energy expert, I'm told.
Oh my goodness! So they'd probably give him $100 million too.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they've done that. They've done the SEC climate disclosures, which is going to cost corporations hundreds of billions of dollars. And they've also just said that they will force companies, this is on the record as part of their net zero asset manager agreement, if corporations don't comply with their view of climate risk, they will literally remove their board. So I called all that out, and they got massively ratioed. And what I hope that the end result is that they won't call out these good actors like Aaron Kinsey publicly again, and let them choose who they think the best fiduciary is for their assets.
Well, I think that's really important. And, thanks for all the work that you're doing, pointing all this stuff out, Matt. I really appreciate it. It's just great information. And as more of it happens, because we know it will, we'll have to have you back on to talk about it again. So really appreciate you being here. Guys,
it seems like they happen every day.
Thanks, bud. Guys, in just a few moments, a major new book about Biden's Afghan withdrawal with author Jerry Dunleavy. It's going to be a big one. We thought it was bad. Unfortunately, it's worse than we thought. But first, guys, a quick word from another sponsor, the Birch Gold Group. Look, folks, our country is literally $34 trillion in debt. Biden inflation is only making it worse, and the Fed just keeps printing more money. We hear the printers going whir all day long. That's all they do. This means your costs go up and quality of life goes down. So, like I always said, I want you to be prepared. Don't just bury your head in the sand. Actually do something about what's going on right now. Diversify a portion of your savings into gold with the Birch Gold Group. Gold is your hedge against inflation, and Birch makes it easy to own gold. They'll take you through the process step by step so you can educate yourself. They can answer any questions and help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, tax and penalty free. That's important. So don't pay a penny out of pocket. To learn more, text Don Jr., DONJR, to the number 989898 and get your free info kit. Again, that's text Don Jr., DONJR, to the number 989898 to learn more. And guys, joining me now, co-author of the new book, Kabul, The Untold Story of Biden's Fiasco and the American Warriors Who Fought to the End, Jerry Dunleavy. Jerry, good to have you here, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
So you did a lot of research for your book, and you actually found out some shocking details. I mean, this is something that's sort of it's almost a go-to in my speeches when I talk about the Afghan withdrawal. I mean, the adults were back in charge, and morons like Anthony Blinken, our Secretary of State, get on stage and they talk about how they're shocked and dismayed that the Taliban didn't install a more diverse and inclusive government. So if you thought it was bad and that was bad, there's even more shocking details about this withdrawal. And I want you to go over some of the big revelations in the book. Can you talk about how even the COVID vaccine mandate impacted the Afghan withdrawal under Joe Biden?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Let me just start with a real quick disclaimer. I'm a senior investigator on the House Foreign Affairs Committee that's investigating this disastrous withdrawal by President Biden, but I'm just speaking as the co-author, not on behalf of the committee or the investigation. But yeah, I mean, shockingly, the Biden administration sort of obsession to some extent with the COVID vaccines did impact the withdrawal. The U.S. Embassy in Kabul pretty much locked down for a few weeks in the summer of 2021, which slowed down efforts to process SIV applicants. So there are very likely Afghan allies who had their exit from Afghanistan slowed down because of the Biden administration's response to COVID. Now, when it comes to the evacuation itself, the COVID vaccine mandate actually impacted the readiness and the deployment of some of our U.S. service members. There was a squad leader, team leaders, a surgeon for the Marine groups who were going to be deploying there, who were not able to go because they had not received the COVID vaccine. The 82nd Airborne that was preparing to go had to shuffle its forces around because members had not gotten the COVID vaccine. And so as Afghanistan is falling apart, as the Taliban is taking over the country, as we're about to leave Americans behind, leave tens of thousands of our Afghan allies behind, these COVID mandates by the Biden administration had an impact on the U.S. military's ability to respond to all of that.
So you found that we missed sort of two opportunities to actually stop the deadly Kabul suicide attack. I mean, that's sort of shocking to me. No one seems to know about that. What were those? I mean, this killed 13 troops. So we had two opportunities to stop it. No one seems to know about it. What happened?
Yeah. So let's talk about sort of the decisions that Biden and those below him made that set up this Abbey Gate attack. So first off, this decision to abandon Bagram Air Base. A foolish decision for many reasons. Keeping Bagram would have been a much smarter, safer place to do an evacuation from. Keeping Bagram would have enabled the U.S. To keep its air assets in the country, to continue bombing ISIS-K, Al-Qaeda, stopping Taliban advances. It's very, very, very unlikely that the Taliban would have been able to take Kabul if we had held on to Bagram. On top of all of that, at Bagram, there is a prison that held thousands of terrorists, ISIS-K terrorists, Taliban terrorists, Al-Qaeda terrorists. Among these ISIS-K terrorists was a man by the name of Abdul Rahman al-Lagri. Biden administration has refused to say his name, but he is the man that carried out the Abbey Gate bombing. He was in prison at Bagram. The Taliban freed him from Bagram on August 15th. So the simple fact is, if we had just held on to Bagram, the guy who carried out that attack that took the lives of those 13 U.S. service members, he still would have been behind bars rather than out there trying to kill Americans. On top of that, there's the testimony from Sergeant Tyler Vargas Andrews, of course, the Marine sniper who has testified that he had a suspect in his sights who met the description that he had been passed of a suspicious individual. He asked for permission to take the shot. His commanding officer told him that, as a commanding officer, he didn't know if he had permission to give Tyler, if he didn't know if he was able to give Tyler permission to take that shot. Now, on top of that, the U.S. military, General McKenzie, in Doha around August 15th, the Taliban, as it's knocking on the gates of Kabul, actually offered to let the United States military take over security of Kabul. And on the spot, General McKenzie turned that down. And so that was essentially a green light for the Taliban to come into Kabul. And so the United States military during this evacuation was reliant on the Taliban to provide security outside of that airport. And McKenzie has later said that there were a number of times, a bunch of times, where we asked the Taliban to raid or search a suspected ISIS-K location. And the Taliban sometimes said no. And on top of that, just keep in mind that the U.S. did not carry out any airstrikes against any ISIS-K locations from the time that the Taliban took over Kabul on August 15th until after the Abbey Gate bombing. And so you kind of put all of those factors together, and it's pretty clear that the Abbey Gate bombing that took the lives of those 13 service members, it was not inevitable.
I mean, it's so frustrating, right? And then, right after that, in the aftermath of it, it was like 15 minutes later, like, we bombed the guy that did it. I'm like, wait, you didn't see it coming. You didn't know it was going to happen. But you imagine, it turns out it was just like a goat herder's family. Is there any more about that? Because they just greenlight sort of the murder of someone to check a box to make it look like they were actually doing something about it. They didn't see any of this coming. They had no idea what was going on. The incompetence was astounding, but magically in like 15 minutes, they were able to find the guy that did it and put a Hellfire missile through his head. But that clearly wasn't the case. It didn't happen. But I guess they were just content with the media being willing to do their bidding for him and pretend like they got him. Is there anything about that you guys are aware of in the research on the book?
Yeah, so there were actually 2 U.S. airstrikes after the Abbey Gate bombing, because keep in mind, we were relying on the Taliban to provide security against us, against ISIS-K. Obviously, the Taliban, shockingly, did not do a very good job of that. So one of the airstrikes was on August 27th, and that was an airstrike in Nangarhar province, where we said that we killed a terrorist by the name of Kabir Aidi, who the U.S. military said was connected to the Abbey Gate bombing. Now, raises the question of why was the U.S. not carrying out airstrikes against ISIS-K before the Abbey Gate bombing? On August 29th, that's when we carried out an airstrike in Kabul that killed civilians. No members of ISIS-K, just a bunch of civilians. An airstrike that General Milley had called a righteous strike before he had to walk that back. All of this goes back to this decision to rely on the Taliban to provide security for us. We had been fighting the Taliban for 20 years. The Taliban was involved in killing, probably over 2,000 U.S. service members. But we're relying on them to provide security outside this airport, with deadly results.
Yeah, we also left them biometric scanners so that anyone that helped us over the last 20 years, they can make sure they find them and snuff them out, because that's, the adults are back in charge. But yeah, it's lunacy. But the book also describes, if we're going to talk about lunacy, how dozens of terrorists were just let into the United States after withdrawal. How did that happen? Because, we see it coming across our border. I'm sure there's plenty more, but this was before even that crisis really manifested itself with how bad it is. What happened there, and how bad is that problem?
Yeah, so the Defense Department's Inspector General concluded that there were dozens of Afghans who made it into the United States who were later found to have what the DoD Inspector General called significant security concerns related to them. And the Inspector General said that among those concerns was known or suspected terrorist ties and latent fingerprints found on improvised explosive devices. The DoD Inspector General also said that one Afghan who made it into the United States had actually been freed by the Taliban from prison in August of 2021. Now, let me kind of level set here. A lot of the Afghans that the U.S. evacuated due to heroic efforts by the U.S. military there, a lot of these Afghans were Afghans that, were interpreters that helped the United States fought alongside us. A lot of them were. Some of the people that the U.S. evacuated did not have particular ties to the U.S. mission in Afghanistan. And some of them had significant security concerns, according to Defense Department investigations. Now, how did that happen? It happened because the Biden administration did not prepare for this. They were not ready. They were not planning. They were not preparing. They called the evacuation when the Taliban had surrounded Kabul and was even walking into Kabul. All of this happened way too late with no planning. And so, at certain points, the airfield was completely rushed and flooded by crowds. You saw those images.
No, it was a terrible visual. Yeah, it's just brutal. Again, people falling off plane wheels. Brutal.
Horrific images. And, this all goes to the fact that the Biden administration did not prepare, did not plan, and acted way too late. And so when you don't plan, when you don't prepare, when you act too late, a handful of bad guys, and maybe more than a handful, slip through, and that's just what happens. And something to keep in mind when we're talking about the people that did get evacuated from Afghanistan. Keep in mind there were hundreds of Americans who were left behind, and tens
Oh
of
yeah, no,
thousands.
the whole thing's brutal. Yeah, America
Thousands of
last.
As well, and some of those Afghan allies left behind, hundreds of them targeted by the Taliban in revenge and reprisal killings. So those are people who have been killed. They're not getting out.
So, after 20 years of war, it didn't seem like we had even a fundamental understanding of, this is millions, some of these losers that are just terrible. But, why would the Biden administration rely on the Taliban for security in Kabul? The whole thing's just, you're going to rely on literally the people you've been at war with for 20 years for security? Who's dumb? Joe Biden's pretty fucking dumb, but you're that dumb, that's going to be your go-to. That's the fox guarding the henhouse times 1,000. Who thought this was a good idea? How did that happen?
Yeah, so some of this just kind of goes back to the fundamental terrible decision that President Biden made. His decision to go to zero in Afghanistan, because when Biden took office, we had 2,500 troops there, along with many more actually NATO forces there. And on top of that, you had the contractors, thousands of contractors as well. So Biden decides to go to zero. When Biden decides to go to zero, NATO can't stay there without U.S. support. And it means pulling all the contractors as well. So we go to zero, we pull all U.S. troops, all contractors, NATO forces all come out. All of this being done without Biden coming up with a plan about how to keep the Afghan military fighting, about how to keep the Afghan Air Force on the field. This comes as the Biden administration is wildly exaggerating the size of the Afghan military, wildly underestimating the strength of the Taliban, being completely behind the eight ball on the speed of the Taliban's advances, making ridiculous political decisions like setting our withdrawal date for the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Nothing strategic about that.
It's not too smart.
Kind of a gross decision, and one of the results of that decision is that on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, you have the Taliban back in charge, doing all of this in the middle of the Afghan fighting season, and refusing to start this evacuation as soon as it needed to be done, clinging to the idea of keeping a U.S. embassy open, even as the Taliban is taking Afghan provincial capitals, even as they surround Kabul, refusing to start this evacuation. And so by the time that we decide to start this evacuation, the Taliban has taken almost all of Afghanistan. They've surrounded Kabul. We have troop caps set by President Biden. And so there you are in an impossible situation. You rely on the Taliban to provide security. The Taliban stops tons of our Afghan allies from getting through, beating our Afghan allies, killing some of them, beating Americans as well. And some Americans that were left behind because they were terrified to try to run through that Taliban gauntlet, because some of them had tried to make it through and were physically attacked by the Taliban. And so this all goes back to, a cascading series of decisions made by President Biden that put these U.S. service members in an impossible situation with the Taliban right outside the gates, the Taliban enemy who they've been fighting for 20 years. While ISIS-K is roving around, some of those ISIS-K members, keep in mind, as we mentioned, freed by the Taliban just days earlier. And one of them gets through and carries out a devastating attack that kills 13 U.S. service members, wounds dozens more U.S. service members, some of them grievously, and kills, mind you, nearly 200 Afghans in that crowd as well.
Yeah. Well, what was the most surprising thing you found in your research, and what do you make of sort of Joe Biden's refusal to own up to any of the mistakes? He refuses to say the name of the 13 dead troops, and he broke his promise to get all Americans out. What was the biggest shock in sort of researching all of this?
Yeah, it's hard to be shocked, I suppose. But in terms of the biggest surprise, I suppose it would be the sort of the willful blindness that the Biden administration had throughout all of this. All of this was foreseeable. All of this was predictable. When you pull U.S. troops out in rapid fashion, when you pull all of the advisors and the logistics and the contractors, when you pull the rug out from underneath the Afghan military, and while at the same time you're in total
Oh. Guys, I think we may have lost that connection. Jerry, you still there? All right.
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, we got you back. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy what's all going on there. But you've also done some major reporting in the U.S. On the security state politicizing the China election interference in 2020. You're one of the few journalists that'll actually cover it. Can you share with the audience what you found and how it might impact 2024? Because it seems like a big one with what they're doing, and yet almost no one's going to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, let me just stress again now, I'm not talking on behalf of Congress or the committee, just sort of putting my recovering journalist hat on here for a second. So, yeah, back in 2020, the U.S. intelligence community assessed that Russia tried to influence the election, that the Iranians tried to influence the election, but that China thought about it but didn't. Now, that was the majority opinion by the U.S. intelligence community, but there was a minority view within the intelligence community by the National Intelligence Officer for Cyber and other members of the intelligence community who did believe that China had attempted to influence the 2020 election and had done so in an effort to try to undermine now former President Trump's reelection chances. Now, this is sort of a big divide within the U.S. intelligence community because you have the National Intelligence Officer for Cyber and others in there saying, hey, look, China is trying to take steps to influence a presidential election. And you had now former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe take the side of the National Intelligence Officer for Cyber, saying that in his view, the intelligence showed that China had attempted to influence the 2020 election. And an analytic ombudsman, kind of a mouthful there, actually kind of took a look at why there was this divide inside the intelligence community. And one of the findings there was that analysts on the Russia side were much more willing to assess that Russia was influencing an election than analysts on the China side. And one of the reasons that this ombudsman found why was that some of the China analysts may have been worried that, if they found that China is trying to influence this election, then that might be used by members of the Trump administration. And so it's kind of this feeling among, some of the analysts on the China side inside the intelligence community that they didn't want their intelligence, to be used in that way. And so
because it would help Trump because Trump was tough on China, and Joe Biden's basically been a blank check for China ever since they paid Hunter umpteen millions to do whatever it is that Hunter does, which is nothing productive or business related.
And what I'd add here is that after 2020, after that election goes by, suddenly the intelligence community is actually saying, oh, by the way, China is trying to influence the 2022 midterms. And so they very quickly were able to shift to agreeing that China was trying to influence our elections after that 2020 election had passed by. And so, look, I would just say China trying to influence our elections is something that really needs to be kept an eye on, along with all of these Chinese influence efforts in academia, targeting politicians, targeting business. China's very serious about this. Its United Front Work Department's very serious about this. Its Ministry of State Security is very serious about this. And I'm not quite convinced that that the U.S. intelligence community is taking it quite as seriously as they should be.
They're definitely not, unfortunately. But Jerry, tell us where everyone can find the book, and I recommend you guys check it out because we have to understand exactly what we're getting into, especially as we're in an election year, when we understand the sort of the gross incompetence that we're dealing with on a daily basis.
Yeah, you can get it wherever books are sold. Check in stores. You can go to Amazon. And if you'll indulge me real quick, I know that the Gold Star families, if they're watching or if they watch us, would probably appreciate it. As you mentioned earlier, President Biden has never said the names of the 13 U.S. service members who were killed at Abbey Gate out loud and in public. But I'd love to real quick. So
Sure.
That's David Espinoza, Nicole G., Darren Taylor Hoover, Ryan Christian Knaus, Hunter Lopez, Riley McCollum, Dylan Marola, Kareem Nakui, Dagan Page, Yohani Rosario, Humberto Sanchez, Jared Schmitz, and Maxton Soviak. Our book was dedicated to them and to the other 2,448 Americans who lost their lives in Afghanistan. And I do hope that people check out the book. And I do hope that this debacle in Afghanistan is at least something that people keep in mind when they go to the ballot box there in 2024, because this was a disaster. The Taliban's back in charge. Americans left behind, Afghans left behind, 13 new Gold Star families, ISIS-K now carrying out attacks around the world, and a more dangerous world with Russia, China, and our other adversaries taking advantage of what happened.
Yeah, I mean that is Joe Biden's legacy, and it's a damn shame. So Jerry, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here, and guys, make sure to go check out the book Kabul. Okay. Also, guys, like, share, subscribe. Make sure that you're checking out our incredible sponsors. Okay, that part of this is supporting those who support us. Go to publicsquare.com/VNSH to claim a limited time offer on their concealed carry holsters. Probably a good time to get into concealed carry. If you're not already, that's publicsquare.com/VNSH. And protect yourself against Biden inflation and the economic chaos, which the Birch Gold Group. To learn more, text Don Jr., that's text Don Jr., DONJR, to the number 989898 and get your free info kit. Educate yourself. Teach yourself what you need to know. That's text Don Jr. to 989898. And also, any of you guys, if you're in Indiana tomorrow, I'll be there in Shelbyville with Congressman Jim Banks, who's running for Senate there because we need some more fighters in the Senate. Could be really good. So I'm in Shelbyville with Jim Banks at the Fisher Food Grade for an America First rally. Doors open at 11 a.m., so my butt is waking up really early from Florida tomorrow to get there. But if you're in Indiana, you want to check out a great rally, doors open at 11 local time. Learn more. Go to amfirsttour.com, amfirsttour.com. Get your tickets. If you're in Indiana, check it out. Guys, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, okay? If you're on locals, I'll jump on there in a minute or two for the AMA. So if you're on there, you can head over that way now. I'll be there shortly. Like, share, subscribe. If you get your podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or your friends do, send it that way. It's because of you guys that will get the message out. Thank you, boys and girls, and I will see you on Thursday. Have a good night.